Title: No Cameras Allowed. The secret prison America pretends doesn't exist. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. The Fortress of Silence. Hidden in the cold heart of Colorado, surrounded by mountains and snow that never melts completely, stands a fortress most Americans have never seen. It's not marked on tourist maps, and few people have ever been inside. Officially, it's called the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, or ADX Florence. But among inmates, guards, and journalists who've studied it, it has another name: the Alcatraz of the Rockies. From above, it looks like a geometric maze carved into the desert. Layers of concrete walls, watchtowers, and motion sensors circling the compound. Inside those walls live some of the most dangerous men in the United States. Men whose names once dominated headlines before vanishing into silence. Drug lords, domestic terrorists, gang leaders, and high-profile criminals all end up here when no other facility can contain them. Every inch of ADX Florence is designed for control. There are no bars, only thick concrete walls. Doors slide open remotely. Windows are narrow slits positioned to show nothing but the sky, so no inmate can know where he is or what time it is. The architecture itself is part of the punishment. It's not built for rehabilitation. It's built for containment. Prisoners here spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. Their cells measure 7 by 12 feet, smaller than an average bathroom. Inside there's a bed made of concrete, a steel toilet, and a tiny desk. Meals arrive through a small slot in the door. For 1 hour a day, the door opens automatically to allow exercise, which happens alone in a small, caged yard that looks more like an air vent than open space. For most of the men here, the sound of another human voice is rare. Conversations echo faintly through the air ducts. Coded messages passed between cells to remind themselves they still exist. Guards patrol in silence. Even footsteps seem muffled, as if the building itself wants to keep its secrets. Former inmates who've spoken after release describe the same sensations. The weight of silence, the loss of time, the way the mind starts bending after years without touch or sight of another person. One said, "You stop being afraid of dying. You start being afraid of never feeling human again." But ADX Florence didn't appear out of nowhere. It was created in 1994 after a wave of violence across American prisons. Attacks on guards, riots, murders ordered from behind bars. The government needed a place where they could isolate the most uncontrollable, the most feared, and the most notorious offenders. This prison became that solution, the end of the line for those who couldn't exist anywhere else in the system. Inside, every movement is calculated. Doors open electronically, showers are timed, and communication is restricted to prevent plotting or contact with the outside world. Letters are read, phone calls monitored, and visits occur behind thick glass. Even when prisoners meet their lawyers, they're separated by walls and watched by cameras. The staff members who work there describe the environment as emotionally draining, a place where even guards feel isolated from the rest of society. "You leave a part of yourself behind when you walk out of here," one officer once said. "The silence follows you home." Despite the intense restrictions, incidents still occur. Inmates find ways to send coded messages, to tap into pipes, to leave marks on the walls. Small rebellions against the system that has buried them alive. Yet for most, those acts of defiance are fleeting. Over time, reality collapses into routine. The same gray walls, the same schedule, the same echoing silence. Each day begins with the same metallic buzz. Breakfast slides through the door slot. A voice echoes faintly from a loudspeaker, "Unit check complete." Then silence again. No laughter, no footsteps, no sense of motion. Only the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint whir of ventilation. Hours pass unnoticed until the door opens once more for the single hour of yard time. But the yard at ADX isn't what most imagine. It's a small, roofless concrete pen surrounded by high walls, open only to the sky. There's no grass, no dirt, no sound of wind through trees, only air and memory. Many inmates skip it altogether. "You can't tell if it's morning or night," one said. "You just know you're still here." By evening, cells lock down again. The lights dim, but never fully. Sleep is restless, interrupted by checks and machinery. For the men trapped inside, the difference between one day and the next becomes meaningless. To the outside world, ADX Florence represents safety, the place where America's worst offenders can never harm again. But to those inside, it represents something else entirely, a slow erasure of identity. They are alive, yet almost invisible. Punished, yet forgotten. And in a world of endless silence, Even the strongest minds begin to question what it means to still be human. The mind that fights back. Inside the gray corridors of ADX Florence, time doesn't move, it circles. Days blur into each other until even memory becomes uncertain. What day is it? What month? For many inmates, that question stopped mattering years ago. The only rhythm left is the sound of the air system, the clank of the metal slot opening for food, and the echo of a voice shouting down the ventilation duct. Proof that someone else is still alive. Psychologists who've studied long-term solitary confinement call this environment total sensory deprivation. It's the kind of silence that can bend a human mind. Inside these walls, men who once ruled criminal empires find themselves reduced to whispers and routines. A former gang leader who spent 15 years in ADX once said, "It's not the time that breaks you, it's the nothingness." Each cell is its own world. A television for educational programs, a Bible or a law book, and a single small window angled toward the sky. The window was designed intentionally. Inmates can see light but never the horizon. It's a constant reminder that freedom exists somewhere, just not for them. Some adapt. They build routines that keep their minds moving, push-ups, reading, writing letters that may never be answered. Others turn inward. The silence becomes a mirror. Thoughts loop endlessly. The guilt, the pride, the fear, it all grows louder until it's deafening. One psychologist described it as the mind eating itself. Prison officials defend the system. "These men earned this level of control," a warden once said. "They are dangerous even behind bars." There's truth in that. Some of the inmates housed here have masterminded attacks, led violent organizations, or killed within other prisons. ADX is meant to keep the public safe. Yet even those who built the system admit it comes at a cost. Guards too feel the strain. They work 12-hour shifts under constant tension, speaking little, following precise routines. They're trained to never let emotion show, not empathy, not anger, not fear. One officer confessed years later that he would hear doors closing in his sleep. After a while, he said, "You start feeling caged too." Inside one cell, a former inmate, let's call him Marcus, spent more than a decade in near total isolation. Convicted for orchestrating violent crimes while in another federal facility, he arrived at ADX in his mid-30s, strong, defiant, and determined not to break. For the first few years he read law books obsessively, filing appeals and writing essays on justice and punishment. But as years passed, letters slowed, appeals were denied, and the outside world forgot his name. His voice, once sharp and loud, grew quiet. Marcus began to talk to the lights, whispering confessions and arguments to himself. He carved a line on his wall for every month that passed, then every year. One day he stopped counting. "It's strange," he said later during a rare interview. "You start losing your shape. You become part of the room." Mental health teams visit weekly, peering through small openings to ask standardized questions. "Are you eating? Sleeping? Any thoughts of self-harm?" Most inmates answer automatically. There's little therapy in a place built for control. Psychologists note that prolonged isolation creates irreversible changes in cognition. Difficulty distinguishing between dreams and reality, heightened anxiety, hallucinations. Yet within ADX, these symptoms are often considered proof that the system is working. For a few, the mind becomes both enemy and ally. They invent worlds, imaginary conversations, and detailed mental maps of freedom, entire cities built in memory just to keep their thoughts alive. Some inmates learn languages from dictionaries. Others memorize the sound of each passing guard's footsteps. One man claimed he could tell time by the echo in the hallway. The institution runs on precision. Doors open by schedule. Showers, yard time, medication, all are automated, brief, predictable. It's designed to remove uncertainty, yet ironically, that same predictability becomes its own torture. Each hour feels identical. Even punishment has rhythm. Occasionally, a storm passes through the Rockies. The thunder rolls across the compound, shaking the air vents. For a brief moment, nature's noise returns, uncontrolled, powerful, alive. Some inmates press their ears against the steel just to hear it better. Then as quickly as it came, it's gone, and the silence returns heavier than before. Outside the walls, few people think about what happens here. News cameras can't enter, and most footage is tightly controlled. Official tours show clean corridors and cooperative inmates. What they don't show are the invisible battles, men fighting their own thoughts for survival. As one former warden admitted in an interview, ADX is the safest prison in America. But safety has a sound, and it's the sound of nothing. Every prisoner here has a sentence, but not all of them know how to serve it. The law measures time in years. The mind measures it in heartbeats, in echoes, in the number of times a man whispers his own name just to remember who he was. And that's where the danger truly lies, not in what these men have done, but in what endless silence can do to them. For most people, a day passes without notice. The sun rises, the world moves, and time flows in rhythm. But inside ADX Florence, time isn't a flow, it's a still photograph that never changes. The seasons shift outside the concrete walls, yet inside the light stays the same. Every hour, every sound, every step repeats like an endless loop. After years in isolation, many prisoners begin to lose track not just of the calendar but of themselves. Psychologists call it temporal disorientation, when the brain, starved of variation, stops registering time normally. One inmate once described it this way: "In here, a week feels like a day and a day feels like forever." The government calls ADX Florence the most secure prison in America, and it is. No one has ever escaped. But what makes it different from every other facility is not its walls or its technology. It's what it does to the concept of existence. Men who were once headlines have become whispers in official logs, their lives measured only by routine checklists and automated schedules. There are stories of inmates who haven't touched another human being in 20 years. Some haven't seen their families since the day they were transferred. Visits happen through thick glass, voices distorted by intercom buzz. For many, the only consistent human interaction is a guard's gloved hand passing a tray of food through a slot in the door. When researchers and journalists occasionally request interviews, the process takes months. Few are granted permission. Even fewer inmates are willing to speak. The ones who do talk rarely raise their voices. Their words come slow, thoughtful, as if rediscovering how language feels. One man said, "You start to forget the world had colors." The Supermax system was built to protect society, to contain those deemed too violent, too influential, or too dangerous for any other facility. And it works. Violence inside ADX is rare. The control is absolute. But there's another kind of danger here, one that doesn't make headlines: the quiet unraveling of the mind. Medical records reveal a pattern: depression, paranoia, insomnia, emotional numbness. Psychologists who have studied the facility describe symptoms of post-traumatic stress even among staff. The silence, the control, the constant awareness of surveillance, it seeps into everyone. One retired officer admitted, "You start to forget who's serving time and who's just working there." But despite the darkness, fragments of humanity still survive in small, defiant ways. Some inmates write letters to advocacy groups. Others sketch landscapes from memory: mountains, beaches, faces they once loved. Their artwork, confiscated or donated, often shows a common theme: open sky, a reminder of something that once existed beyond the walls. One prisoner, known for his intelligence and calm demeanor, was asked during an evaluation what he missed most. He thought for a long moment before answering, "The sound of my mother's kitchen. Pots, radio, laughter. I'd trade 10 years in here for 5 minutes of that sound." There's something haunting about that honesty, the understanding that punishment has turned into absence. These men are not just locked away from the world, they are locked away from time itself. Outside, activists and former officials debate whether such facilities should exist. Some argue they're necessary to prevent violence. Others say prolonged isolation is psychological death. Even international human rights organizations have questioned if this level of confinement violates basic humanity. Yet the debate rarely changes policy. The walls remain, the cells remain, and the silence continues. Every few years, documentaries and news reports surface, offering brief glimpses inside. The public reacts, shocked, fascinated, divided. Then, as quickly as it appears, the story fades again. The Supermax returns to its secrecy, its silence, its order. In a rare official statement, a federal warden once said, "ADX is where we send men we cannot trust with the outside world, or with each other." But what no one said aloud is that the system also doesn't trust them with themselves. When the lights dim each night, hundreds of men lie awake, their thoughts the only company they have. The air hums. The steel cools. A guard passes, glancing through the small glass window, confirming what the records will later show: inmate secure. No movement. And somewhere inside that silence, time folds in on itself. Days become months. Months become years. Identities blur into numbers. The world outside forgets, but inside, the forgotten remember everything.